from my perspective, it would be a shame to develop more technology just for the sake of technology that is somehow disconnected from human or from planet.
Welcome to The Regeneration Will Be Funded. My name is Matthew Monahan, and in this series, we're exploring the intersections of regenerative finance, technology, and our living planet. Created with Ma Earth, you can find all of our conversations and more at maearth.com. Thanks for joining us. Today's guest is Philip Stelic from Crane Earth. Philip is an accomplished repeat founder, and in today's discussion, we talk about his previous company, Centrifuge, and how it seeks to move real-world assets on-chain. We talk about how when Philip left that company and taking a personal break in his journey, and now coming back into crypto and choosing to help establish a venture capital fund. I asked Philip about trends he's seen in this crypto meets climate or refi space, as well as the risks of over-financialization, especially when we talk about applying crypto to nature. Philip is an unconventional VC investor. He's very reflective and brings intelligence across multiple domains. I'm glad we got to catch him at the early stages of Crane Earth. This conversation was recorded in March 2023 at Mangaroa, New Zealand. Enjoy Philip Stelic. Today we're here with Philip Stelic. Philip is co-founder of Crane Earth and a general partner, and he's also the co-founder of Centrifuge. Welcome, Philip.
Welcome to me. Nice to meet you again.
So tell us, what is Crane Earth?
Crane Earth is a venture capital fund specifically focused on supporting projects at the earliest stages. So the first money that a founder or project could take in. And we're supporting projects and founders at the intersection of Web3 and real-world impact. So any founders who are working on projects to help with climate change, to help with social inequality, and making our world a better place, and using decentralized and Web3 technologies for that means.
And what do you mean when you say real world? Like what is not real world?
Yeah, when I say real world impact is an important qualifier when we talk about crypto, because a lot of crypto and Web3 projects kind of continue to move within the Web3 and crypto bubble without really reaching back down to this planet, to the earth, or to the people. And for us, when we say real world impact, it makes clear that we're getting out of this bubble and helping projects that are, for example, regenerating the land or working with communities on the ground, or really tapping into like the supply chain or sustainability related projects in the 3D space.
Nice. And you've been a builder for a long time. What was the journey for you and how you arrived here?
Yeah, my journey as a builder started when I moved to San Francisco when I was 21. So I'm from Germany originally. And there I discovered this thing called Silicon Valley, which I actually had no idea about. I moved for a job, but I had no idea about Silicon Valley. And went through the typical Silicon Valley kind of journey. I started a couple of companies. Some didn't go so well. Some went quite well. And very focused at that time at what we call fintech these days. I think when we started, like early 2000s, it wasn't really fintech yet. Really helping enterprises with the supply chain, like again, really real world stuff. Then at some point decided I'm going to stop all of the Silicon Valley hubbub. I really started to get burned out. I really was drawn to take a pause from the faster, bigger, more kind of world I started to find myself in. And
it's such a recurring theme for folks. Do you think it's specific to Silicon Valley, specific to the entrepreneurial archetype?
Yeah.
Say more about what was faster, more.
Yeah, that's a good one. like as an entrepreneur and as a builder, it is about bringing something into the world. And I found that for many folks, they actually have a drive to create something meaningful, and then somehow along the way, a lot of us kind of lose that path of doing it from a desire just to give and to desire to build something amazing. And somehow and I think Silicon Valley is a big driving part of that, is because you build something and then you scale it globally, you scale it fast. And I get it. Like, if you want to have impact in the world, you need to grow fast. That's also what we're looking at climate change now. We need to go fast. So I think venture capital is actually a piece that can help. But I think for folks who kind of go through this cycle of finding something that they love, and then somehow there's a breaking point often where you overwork, you do it for the wrong reasons, you do it just for the sake of growth rather than, as I said, rather than something from the inside. And I've seen that mostly in Silicon Valley. Like, I also was living in Berlin and in the ecosystem there, startup ecosystem as well as Web3 ecosystem, and didn't see it that much there. So as much as I love Silicon Valley and San Francisco for what it is, but I think it also breeds a certain type of behavior that is eventually not healthy anymore, at least not for me and for a bunch of people I know.
Got it. So you burnt out, effectively.
Yeah, very simple.
And what happened after that?
I took a break. Yeah, I left my company, took a break, and did some things completely outside of technology, more focused on personal and interpersonal inquiries and work. And then in 2016, 17, came back into the technology world and was looking, what do I do with this drive to build something? And I discovered something called Ethereum back then, and came back together with some of my previous co-founders. And we kind of were in the same boat of deciding if we want to use our company building and our fintech experience to build something radically different, what would be the platform that we would do it on? And then we decided, well, the only way how we would want to continue is building a decentralized financial system. And so we built on Ethereum. We started in roughly 2017. We founded a company called Centrifuge. And then kind of the next cycle of my outward manifestation continued as a builder, as a technologist.
In 2016, 2017, decentralization was, a buzzword only within a small community.
Yeah.
And you said, the only way we'd want to build something is on a decentralized financial system. Can you tell me more about what leads to that conclusion and that thesis?
Yeah. First of it was funny because when we joined in 2016, 2017, I thought, fuck, I'm really late to the game here.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
And now in hindsight, it's like, oh, this was really early on still. It was mostly because early on in my career, I built basically software to streamline processes that exist, like supply chain, financial supply chain, work with large corporates and help them streamline their financial systems, very centralized. We ultimately were able to bring money to small businesses that needed it with the financial products that we built, like financing them. But I also found out that in this whole system, we're perpetuating the fact that people with a lot of money just get more money with using softwares that we built. And when I looked at decentralization and kind of the mythos that was coming up when building DeFi systems, everything was turned around. And that was what is inspiring to me. Also asking myself again, what would I build if it's not just for the sake of faster, more. And so everything turning around was like, okay, this is interesting. This is actually using the skills that we have to bring forth a new financial system, hopefully.
Yeah. Okay. So the promise of decentralization potentially helping to stop the perpetuation of inequality and possibly shift the culture around more, faster. And any other kind of reflections and observations about what this core idea of decentralization could lead to, or that we're hopefully moving into?
Yeah, there I would differentiate between kind of my mindset back then, which is now whatever 6-7 years ago, to today. Back then it was really, wow, I have a feeling that this will be something important and I want to be part of it and I want to help build this decentralized financial system. I didn't really fully know what it was. Sure, permissionless, sure, censorship resistance and all of that, but it wasn't really in my bones back then. And if I think about fast forward to today, and also the reason why I do the work I do now is I think we have shifted, or we created an ability within us as a technology community, as well as an economic community, to design financial systems from kind of looking on top, looking from above onto them, and say, how do we want these pieces play together so that we can have more equality, that we can include externalities that usually we're just going to extract from the land. Like, how can we include that? And so today I find it even more important, to build this decentralized system with this frame and with this look from above.
Yeah, I mean, it's an incredible canvas and like an entrepreneurial dream come true to be able to tinker with monetary policy of programmable value, and whether it's token design or organizational design with DAOs or different coordination systems and decentralization, and then drawing from all of these open source Legos and building blocks that surround it. It's just like there's so much possibility, and I think that's part of the reason someone that's not as familiar with the space, I would frame it as why it's feeling inevitable that this is where the puck is going, because you have the brightest minds and builders who they look at this and they go, well, of course, this is where I'm going to build next. Why would I do something in the legacy financial system? Like, this is so far superior in terms of its potential. And so that kind of talent attraction is just going to continue to reinforce itself.
I think that it is also the realization that the old stuff just doesn't work anymore. Like, on a global scale, we're seeing that more and more. And I believe that decentralized systems will play a crucial part. It's not the only solution, but if I would be a technologist today building like my first venture or my first projects, I would be just like, this is exciting. This is, as you said, this is where the future will be going.
Okay, so Centrifuge, can you tell me a bit more about what Centrifuge does and what your thesis was?
Yeah. So we started Centrifuge wearing this hat of, okay, we built enterprise financial software for a long time and saw kind of what happens in a centralized world to finance stuff. And we decided the thesis was, we can build a stack for financing assets, and I can go more in depth what that means, but we can build a stack for financing assets and make them, I don't like the word democratize, but democratize access better for people who have money and want to invest in these types of assets, as well as really reduce the amount of middlemen that are sitting in between somebody who has something that they want to finance and somebody who has capital who want to bring. And with that, also reduce the rates and just make it more direct. And then from this starting point, using these, as we like to say, the financial Lego blocks, and create whole new ways of interacting with these assets or this financing of them. And so what we did at Centrifuge was we developed a way where we can bring what we call real world assets. In essence, they're just assets, but again, differentiating between Web3, all on chain, or crypto within crypto, and something in the real world, and allow them to come on chain. So that would mean somebody who does real estate financing, for example, they're able to register these assets on chain and then tap into financial flows that are on chain. Or somebody who has unpaid invoices and they want to finance them to pay these suppliers earlier, they can tap into this financial flow. Or also somebody who is financing, for example, carbon projects to grow forest or any kind of other way to capture carbon. They can register these real world assets and bring them on chain to include them in the DeFi ecosystem. So it was really, we were the first project to really build this bridge between real world and on-chain DeFi. And today, Centrifuge, I'm not actively involved anymore, but the folks there are doing a great job to make sure that Centrifuge continues to be one of the leading protocols to do exactly this.
Yeah.
And it's really hard. I think there's something to keep in mind. Anything on-chain, it's just code within code. But as soon as you touch the real world, and we can talk about this also when we talk about climate or real-world impact, as soon as you leave this very programmable blockchain world and go into the real world, you deal with people, you deal with legal institutions, you deal with financial regulations, and all of that kind of stuff. So this is, for us, it was clear we need to do this because we don't want to leave that behind.
Got it. So I'd love to just maybe bring it home with an example within Centrifuge. So you said things like property and real estate. So if there's, let's say, a building, and so if that building's being acquired, what you're suggesting is that the building is basically anchored on-chain, listed on-chain, and then what is it? A tokenization that then is enabling other people to purchase it, like an equity table, or help me understand a bit more.
Yeah, there's another layer in between. So how it works, let's take the building example, is there's somebody who is helping people finance real estate. So somebody who is giving out loans, and they will have access to the real estate titles in this case. And so what they do is they use Centrifuge as a protocol and say, hey, we have this financing vehicle, and we bring these assets on chain that we're going to finance, but it's all wrapped within this legal entity of the real estate financing company. And then they tokenize this and make it available for people to finance. They're not really holding shares in the real estate itself, but it's really for the financing aspect of that. You could use this tokenization then also do fractional ownership or anything like this.
Right.
But the core protocol itself is not set up for that. It's really for registering, financing the financial flows.
So a bank has the building, is financing it, has the title, puts that into a vehicle in order to be financed. And those participants who participate in that, it's for return, presumably, right? So, and the bank is able to reduce its exposure and risk by bringing in other capital?
Yeah, it wouldn't be a bank, but it would usually be a startup or a company who does the financing.
I see.
Yeah.
And what's the advantage of on-chain, and where does Ethereum provide new value that's unlocked here?
They would say there's one is just a reduction of middlemen in between. So with the protocol itself, and this goes really more in the finance jargon right now, but you have different tranches. You have a junior and a senior tranche. You can automatically balance stuff out as it gets paid back, and you can just automate a lot of the financial flows. So that is one piece. And then the other piece, where it gets, in my opinion, really interesting, is that you can use these type of assets and make them available in the DeFi universe. We have to be clear, a lot of these assets are securities, so it's not available for anyone or in any kind of pool. But these real-world assets, for example, are used as backing for Maker's DAI as a stable coin. And there are other proposals to use these type of real-world assets for other stable coins as well, which means the stables are not only relying on highly price fluctuating crypto assets, but also are tied to something much more stable that's anchored in the real world.
Right.
And for me now, it's also getting interesting, for example, with this carbon financing pool, is that you can back stables with carbon projects. So basically you're putting nature assets as backing for the currency that you then use on chain, where, like, for me, that's where my heart opens and where I'm getting excited of all the possibilities there.
Nice. Yeah. So, I mean, real world assets is back in vogue at the moment. I mean, I'm hearing a lot about it in the kind of surface of the DeFi conversations. And with Maker, and we'll put links in the show notes to Centrifuge and people who want to,
Mhm.
go down those rabbit holes explicitly. Before we get into the climate aspects, what was post Centrifuge, and did you
Yeah.
have the same Silicon Valley burnout, or what was your journey there?
Very good one. Post Centrifuge. So as I said, I'm not actively involved anymore. I love the project and I support where I can. But I came to a point again where I just decided to take a break, and this time even a deeper inquiry into the why. I went through multiple startup cycles and then through Centrifuge cycle, and just realized the crypto world at that time specifically, it was a lot of like the first ICOs.
That's 2018, 2019.
Yeah. And super high velocity and super like lots of crap out there, and lots of really good stuff that stuck around. But it was just an environment again where it was gone really, really fast, and I just took a break and say I'm gonna really go deeper with myself and with this question of why am I doing this? There's this urge of creative expression that I think a lot of founders and being whatever their creative expression is, designer, programmer, finance, whatever, there's a lot of creative urge also here with me, but I needed to really reset and find out what is my deeper anchor and why would I continue doing any of the technology stuff if at the same time the world seems to be going downhill, and what is my contribution in this quest of allowing us as humans to be on this planet, hopefully for many decades and centuries, where right now the trajectory doesn't look so good. So I stepped away from everything for about two years, and then again came back into the tech world, and that's when I really decided to focus at this intersection of Web3, crypto, and climate or real world impact, because I'm looking again, what are the skills and the experiences I have that I can meaningfully contribute to projects that are working on the problems of this time. And this seemed like an intersection for me that is worth pouring all of my energy and my resources into.
So yeah, I'm super curious, like 2 years of going into a deep inquiry. Can you share anything more about, like what emerged in that space, and then like to go that far down a new rabbit hole and then to come out and be like, back to crypto.
Yeah. Yeah, we're going to take a little turn onto the philosophical, spiritual
excellent
path for a moment. Is for me personally, for many years, I had my own spiritual practice and my own communal inquiries. How do I want to live with others? How do I want to live with the planet? How do I structure my day-to-day life and my relations in a way that actually is true for me, and not necessarily using cookie cutter schemes that society has created over a long period of time. And this kind of sounds stereotypical, but this is truly what the experience for me was. Then about 3 years ago, where I decided, or I had a few experiences within community or with others or with nature, where I decided I'm going to stop everything and just go down this particular rabbit hole with the assumption or with the hope that I come out at some point on the other end, but with a very different internal alignment. And I'm really grateful that I was able to do this, and I was able to structure my time and my place in a way that I was able to do this, and also met folks who accompanied me on the journey, and that could be really people who have experience in communal living or communal being, or people who have like you could say they're teachers in a way, but just who walked this path of inquiry for a little bit longer than I have, and learning from them, learning from shared experiences, be it spiritual, be it on the land, be it interpersonal. And at some point, I realized that I love to focus on the self-inquiry, but again, just the self-inquiry for the self-inquiry's sake was something that didn't really satisfy my being or me. And the question is, what is my creative expression from this new place in the world? And I went back and forth between, maybe I should focus on facilitating or guiding groups, which I did for some time, or create communal experiences or communal living experiences. And while I think they will continue to be part of my life, it's not the highest leverage point that I have. And also all of this part that I just described is kind of the fertile soil then for me to also use my brain and my mind and my experiences to manifest something out there. And so I kind of slowly came back, and I reconnected with my long-term co-founder and best friend Max. We co-founded a few things, and we decided, okay, let's do this new baby out there.
Amazing. And right, one more question before we get to the new baby. If someone's listening to this and they are at that burned out point in their lives, feeling maybe in between chapters, and it can be so confronting and scary to not just immediately, like from my experience, when I've had that impulse to kind of take a big shift, I'm very scared of losing my identity and losing all of the things I know, and what will the people around me think. And it requires a lot of courage to do what you did, to take 2 years off and go into the forest and to be in self-examination and inquiry. And I'm just curious, like, what advice or lessons learned you might offer for folks listening that might be at that part of their journey?
That's a beautiful question. I believe if you get to that point where you realize that it just doesn't work anymore, first off, congratulations. and as you said, it can be quite painful. And for me personally, I actually went past the point where it didn't work anymore for me. So I need to actually just have some time to heal and come down and integrate also my physical body. So I guess one piece is take it slow, and hold it lightly, because like I've seen the pendulum swing from whatever building, working, all the way to the other side, and like then hating on all of that. I would say hold it lightly, because this is also us, and this is also part of us. Sure, like spend some time on this other side and inquire in what it is, and inquire who is this person or who's this being that comes into this body and expresses in the world, or whatever your path of inquiry is. But hold it lightly, because the pendulum might swing back and forth. And find folks who you can be on this journey with. As you said, it could be confronting, losing your identity, and especially in the founder space, like often people's identities are really tied up with their projects as well. And then if you're not at the project anymore, I'm not this founder of that, who am I? Also there, find people who are with you regardless of who you are, and can walk this path with you for a while. There's much more, but
no, I mean, it's interesting too, as a personal reflection. Like you and I have crossed paths 4 or 5 years ago, right before I think you kind of went on that path and that journey a bit more, and now just having what I think we shared lunch in Berlin, and then now we're finding each other once again in real life, and your energy seems magnetic and more integrated, and like that you have gone and found something and integrated it in a really healthy way. and not that you didn't seem healthy and integrated before, but it just feels like it was a positive evolution and positive chapter from the very little bits that I've experienced together. So with that, you find yourself back into, I want to build, I want to, contribute and create, and you team back up with your co-founder. And so I imagine this is now Crane Earth is the expression.
Yeah, I'm just still hung up on the piece that you said about the more integrated. Is because I met you, and you also took a break. Like, you also did the Silicon Valley thing, and you changed a lot. And so I'm even realizing, oh yeah, from the inside, it just feels like I'm doing this and somehow integrating. And from the outside, it's beautiful to get a reflection.
Nice.
And the outward expression right now is Crane Earth, but even Crane Earth is a relatively young baby. Like, we decided to do the fund maybe 4 or 5 months ago, and just like in the early stages now. But even a year ago, teaming up with Max again, we both grew multiple companies from nothing, like with our own money or lent money, up to large scale. And then we helped a bunch of founders and projects along the way. And it was just a question of, okay, how do we help folks to build important stuff? And also there, I think what changed for me is I'm following the flow on the track much more. It was the inquiry that Max and I held using our own resources, our own time, and then kind of cross paths with a venture firm called Crane, basically, Crane Venture Partners out of UK, which we worked with before, who invested in one of our previous companies. And we started to talk with them what our drive is, and then we decided, okay, let's just professionalize or institutionalize that, helping folks and helping founders to bring it to a different scale. And so kind of that evolved over the last year, I would say. And now we're here. I'm meeting so many amazing folks building amazing things, and I'm super happy that I hope I will be able to continue to support them. So far, it seems like it, but that's where I'm at.
Nice. And why back into the Web3 expression? I mean, now that you've seen the space evolve, and some people from the outside looking in be like, well, it's become this speculative frenzy, NFTs and FTX, and why would you go down a spiritual journey, come back and be like, yes, Web3, crypto is where I'm going to express? Is it just because that's what you know, or is it that there's something more here? Yeah. And what are you seeing?
Yeah, I'm so glad I missed all the NFT stuff that happened in the time I was.
Took a perfect break.
Yeah. I mean, part is using the tools that I have to bring forth what I like to say a future worth living for. So I can. That's just part of it. But the other part is that we're seeing an ecosystem emerging within the Web3 space. You could call it like regenerative finance, or refi is one big bucket of that, but projects who are using this technology and the ability to design economic systems and run them and design tokenomics and all of that. We're using these tools to really build projects that benefit, and by using these tools will grow faster or have more impact. And in this case, not faster just for the sake of capital, but for the sake of capital, like nature and social capital. And so that is emerging, and it's really small part. And even when I talk to some of the other Web3 founders, they just heard of refi, but they don't know much about it yet. But I just see this really tight network of folks who have a vision and a mission to do what they do for the sake of the planet, and that's exciting me. And I don't know where this will go. Our thesis is, or my thesis is, this will be an integral part of helping this planet's healing journey. And we can talk more about how specifically. But for me, again, is a question, or this realization, there's this thing happening about with folks who are quite aligned with the values that I have, and how can I support them? And so it's a mix of what I know, what I see emerging, and what I think needs to happen.
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, having spent a lot of the last part of my journey kind of thinking about the environmental context through a climate and ecological lens, just over and over, I feel like I hit the wall of like economic incentive, financial system, really being the roadblock for so much of the work that we need to do as a species, and not so much discovering new ways to plant trees, but discovering new ways to economically coordinate things like planting trees or cleaning up rivers or protecting the oceans and so forth. And so this emergence of this new transformative set of tools, which can be used for good or for otherwise, it gets me really excited. And then, I think in 2016, 2017, when I looked at crypto, I'm like, why is no one talking about climate? And now, you do have a vibrant, albeit small, core of refi minded public good, communities coalescing at different in-person events and online, and through hopefully media outlets like this interview series, just to really try to find one another and talk about some of these key patterns. And so it sounds like what you're doing is positioning yourself to really be in support to founders in this space, not just from a climate perspective, but really any tangible real world impact, trying to bring crypto onto the ground for positive impact, not just in the bubble of digital Web3 and NFT trading. So what else are you seeing? What are the challenges people are facing? How are we funding these projects? It's a bit of a paradox to have your journey lead to being a venture capitalist.
Yeah,
super curious how that feels as well. You don't strike me as someone who comes at that lightly. So maybe you can share more on that.
It's I'm going to start with the capital piece, and then
please
talk about what we see, what I'm seeing. And yes, I'm also looking at myself, and I did not expect to be in venture capital when I started a few years ago. But I realized that a lot of these projects do need capital in order to bring forth what they're building. And also knowing that VC might not be the right capital. I'm also meeting a lot of founders who are building amazing things where I tell them, this is great and I want to support you, but don't take VC money, because that comes with this promise to we're going to grow and we have a certain return at a certain time and so on. And so I'm quite mindful in this role, having been a founder and also having been a Web3 founder, as a VC now coming and saying, what is actually the right project that we can back, where there is a good intersection of this, of these values of regenerating the planet or regenerating communities or whatever it might be that they're doing, and the type of capital that we can provide. And it's not always an easy decision. Like personally, I love some of the projects, but I couldn't invest from the fund. And in some sense, for me, there's a quest, or for me, there's also a perspective of I'm help funnel traditional capital to projects who will regenerate the planet. And if I can do that and play the leverage there, I think this will be a great outcome. So that's why I chose to go into this particular position. And I'm learning a lot about VC, and over the last year and like institutionalizing my own thinking about like all the stuff that VCs do, like portfolio construction and all this stuff. I find it quite fascinating. Another lens on the financial system that I have been in for many years. And then always the question, how can I use that to support this project? How can we use this thinking to help this project to grow again faster, not necessarily only for the return of capital, which we will have to have, but faster for the speed of like helping with this planet's current crisis. So that's the angle from the capital side. And the question of what types of projects or what are we seeing or what am I seeing is frankly the last year was a lot of carbon related projects. First a lot of carbon marketplaces, then also MRV solutions, and it kind of what I like to say is it kind of flowed down from we're trading carbon on chain because we have all this DeFi infrastructure, all kinds of exchanges and so on, like super efficient market making, and then we realized we don't actually have any carbon credits that are really trustworthy on chain, and a lot of the stuff is just BS, and it kind of went down to we need to get these carbon credits. How do we get them? We need to have MRV solutions and we need to support projects. And like in the last period of time, we saw a lot of financing of these carbon projects that eventually will lead to credits. So I think the whole ecosystem kind of went downstream a little bit to like, we need to actually finance good projects on the ground who are sequestering carbon, and then we can issue credits out of there. And so that's just in terms of the amount of projects I've seen in these different buckets that changed over the last year. And I'm personally super excited about anything related to carbon and MRV and regenerating, but I think it doesn't stop at carbon. There are some projects who are starting to unbundle what a credit is. For example, how does biodiversity play in there, or how does water quality play in there, and starting to come up with novel ways to use decentralized technology to enable different type of credits, but just more trustworthy information on chain that then later on we can make educated decisions on. And that could be for offsets, but it could also be for anything else. And then another piece I'm seeing often is folks who are really caring about including the communities on the ground into this whole economic system that is getting built. And that might mean including them somehow in the MRV process. So measuring whatever is on the ground, reporting it, so then it can be verifiable. And then when this data is getting used, rewarding the folks on the ground in the local communities again, or also creating whole new social structures on the ground. It could be through community currencies that are somehow tied back to the land that they're living on, or other systems that somehow include the community. And so that was a starting point. I can also go on for longer there, but just
I mean, so MRV obviously being measuring, reporting, and verification, and so what we're witnessing is that the tools, blockchain and other converging technologies, are, in my mind, really emphasizing and elevating this role and giving space to this role of the verification, because if we can understand the feedback loop where, it's not just plant tree and no, that's good, but plant tree and no, this is the carbon sequestration and this is the biodiversity outcome and this is the water health of the ecosystem and so forth, and verify that with some sort of mechanism that is trusted, and maybe that trust is derived from legitimacy in the local community. Maybe that trust is derived from scientific bodies and standards. Maybe that trust is derived from global verification standards. But that then enables programmable economic value exchange to move with a higher velocity, because someone can say, okay, great, then this unit of carbon outcome, this unit of financial or otherwise value, and how does that exchange, and how do we put those into smart contracts and into. So I'm curious, given your more holistic perspective, before maybe we go into any further of those, like one thing I've struggled with is like, is blockchain just going to overly financialize everything? And like when I'm engaged in a garden, it's like, is the solution here to atomize and financialize and capitalize like all of these pieces?
Yeah.
And just to get more and more narrow in kind of our fine-tuned Western mindset of measuring? Or is the shift we need something different? And yeah, I mean, I've definitely struggled with that question. I'm curious how you feel about it.
Yeah, that's tying nicely back to the comment I made earlier, that not all projects should take VC money. And I'm quite cautious of, like, there's some folks who say tokenize everything and bring everything on chain. And there's some value in bringing stuff on chain that you want traceable and verifiable and potentially like financialize in a way. And I am a believer that we need this, because the current economies and the current large enterprises and so on, they all work with the financial model. So I want to financialize some of these, or tokenize, for example, carbon credits or biodiversity credits in the future, so that they fit into the way of thinking of these large corporates, and that they then finance basically the stuff on the ground, because they will only work with stuff that they can trust, that is somehow legitimized, and kind of able to flow all the way down. I think there is a danger that if you tokenize everything and it's permissionless accessible and anybody can do anything with it, that you might run into some kind of perverse incentives that show up way later. Yeah. So when designing this kind of system is really finding out what is a gradual way, or what are the guardrails that can be put in place to not end up with a whole different incentive mechanism that just is way worse than the existing one. So I'm with you on this. And then I think also that a lot more on like communal projects, if I have a garden, or if I have a community project, I might not want to financialize that for anybody to access. Maybe there's some kind of economy that you only want to have locally, for ease of exchange, or for whatever it is, but being quite mindful to put guardrails, or to design a system in a way that not any actor who is in no way connected to this local ecosystem could come in and wreak havoc.
Right.
So there I would be super mindful. And I have a lot of friends who are like building communities, or who are on the land, and sometimes they come to me and say, "Oh, let's turn this into a DAO," and na. And I'm mostly saying, why? Let's talk about this. Is this really the thing you want to do? Yeah, but then we can have tokens, and with other communities, like let's find out like what it actually needs. I don't think this technology is the solution for everything. By no means. I learned that over the last few years, and
so you're a technologist, crypto developer, VC who advises people not to raise VC money or use technology and crypto too much.
I would just say I really want to pay attention to the circumstances and making the decision that is right for the project and the people involved. Maybe I never thought about this, but maybe it's coming back to my time when I came to San Francisco, and I was like, "Oh, I love to build stuff, and this is cool. I built financial stuff for huge corporates," and then I somehow ended up in this loop of faster, more, and maybe this is my own trauma, so to say, that I'm trying to help others to avoid. But I'm also advising use VC and tokenize the stuff if it's the right solution, and then I'm in my professional expression right now, I'm right there with you, and I'm helping you to think through all of the loops and curves that you might encounter.
Yeah, Yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I think that the more sophisticated one is in a domain, the more nuanced the approach is. And, this kind of tokenize everything, put it all on chain is still kind of a simplistic developmental level. And how are you looking after yourself now in this new chapter where you are embarking back into the madness of work? And like what are your personal practices that you're taking into this experience?
Yeah, there's definitely a piece of, if I want to do regenerative way out there, how to actually continue regenerate this one, or also you, or the community, like my close family or the community I'm in. And if that's not given, then all the other stuff doesn't really matter. Of course it matters, but for me, like starting from within, and like very practically, that means meditating, taking care of my body, sleeping enough, like very simple stuff, like spending time in nature, spending time with loved ones that are not about technology and crypto and whatever. And also there, I am aligning myself more and more with nature's rhythms. So holding, if I look at the year trajectory right now, we're in the southern hemisphere, so like I'm flip-flopped. But aligning myself more with the annual cycles of winter, summer, spring, and just tuning into rhythms that are larger than myself as much as I can. And then there's a very practical stuff. Turn off your phone and computer at 8 p.m. latest, because otherwise the night's sleep is going to be not so good. But most people know this. It's just a question of, are you doing it?
Right.
And finding back to this inner alignment in this core, in whatever way works. Like, and many people do it differently.
Yeah, absolutely. Are there other questions or messages that you would like to share?
And I don't know who will listen to this.
That makes two of us.
But one thing I'm still also meeting a lot of founders and brilliant people who are building e-commerce or building whatever it is that has no tie back to the planet or the crisis that we are in already, and will become more prevalent as we go on. And if anybody of this group is listening to this or looking at this, I just want to say, like, really take a step back and ask yourself, why are you putting your energy into what you're putting your energy into? Because from my perspective, it would be a shame to develop more technology just for the sake of technology that is somehow disconnected from human or from planet. And I'm rooting for you no matter which decision you make, but really take a moment to reflect on, is this really the path that you want to go, and what are the motivations for that? And this is what I would tell people. And it's probably true for any kind of profession, but I'm just technologists.
Yeah.
I think we need folks who have the heart in the right place and building stuff with conviction for these times.
Wise words, Philip. Thank you for sharing your time and your story with us. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that conversation. To learn more, go to craneearth.vc. You can also check out our conversation with Philip's co-founder of Crane Earth, Max Ament. There's links in the show notes. All of our conversations are available at maearth.com. Please like, share, subscribe, tell your friends, join our Discord, and we'll see you next time.